Hello, this will be a short video that shows you some student work from the assignments that you're working on for this learning unit, time of day white balance, and then creative use of time of day and white balance. So first I'm going to show you, you should be making some type of landscape image for this project. And so here we have a very urban landscape of San Francisco from a higher perspective. And you should be working at 3 different times of the day. So here's some examples of 7 a.m., the white balance set to daylight, shifting same time, same view, white balance set to shade. So you can see how automatically the daylight white balance is going to be a little bit more neutral. But the shade balance, which again is basically put a bunch of yellow filters into your digital file information, makes it look a lot warmer. It almost looks like a beautiful summer warm day where the sun is rising. And then you can flip that in almost an artificial dramatic way. Same time of day, of course the same scene. But now the white balance has been set to tungsten. And the tungsten filter, as you can see, is very blue because most tungsten or incandescent light bulbs are very yellow. So what you're telling your camera to do is set a white balance that's not correct for the Kelvin temperature that's happening outside. And then if you switch this to a different time of day, so now we're right around noon, so the sun is now coming directly above, I think this is City Hall. You can see already we've got the same white balance. So here we are at 7 in the morning. There's some directional light with the sun coming as it's rising up. White balance is daylight. And then if you jump to the lighting is different. Now it's above, so there's not as much shape to this structure. You can see more of the roundness when the light is more of a direction. So the above lighting is going to be much flatter. And then of course the color is even more neutral. You have a little bit of warmth earlier in that morning. So you're starting to see the difference in simply the lighting and also the white balance. And then if you changed your white balance but you stuck with the same time frame, noon, to cloudy, cloudy warms it up a little bit but not as much as shade. So the programming of the amount of yellow that's added to your file is slightly different. And then of course the tungsten is still gonna give you a really strong blue cast. So anytime you see this strong blue cast in your photos, hopefully from here on out you'll be like, oh, I left my white balance setting on tungsten, and you can go in and fix it. And then finally, now these are, the sun is either has just set or is about to set because it's going to be over here. There's the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. The lights of the city start to come up, right? And a lot of those are going to be tungsten. So the white balance set to daylight is going to give you this yellow color because the temperature, the Kelvin temperature has really changed in the atmosphere, and a lot of these urban lights are tungsten. You can play around and all of a sudden now you've kind of got this purpley sunset, which doesn't look horrible. It's very purple because oftentimes fluorescent lights have a greenish color cast. And so then your camera again adds some magenta to neutral it out. But if you're under a daylight or a different white balance setting, then you get these shifts that can be really playful, and that's part of this homework project. And then the white balance set to shade, which is going to be a very yellowy color, right? But again, you can see the difference in the white balance choices that you have and the lighting depending upon the time of day. So let's move on to another image. So here now we're looking at the courthouse. It's so funny, actually. Like we're looking at the same building from a very different perspective. These are two different students' projects. So here we have about 8 a.m. Again, some directional lighting coming in, and the white balance is set to daylight. Same time of day, different white balance, so it's a much cooler fluorescent. So you're starting to notice, like, when you start to mess around with your white balance, which is kind of one of the things that I want you to do with this week's project, is it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make it correct. It could, depending upon the Kelvin temperature, but it gives you the opportunity to be creative. And then finally shade. So you'll start to notice that if I'm under, so basically this series of photos were early in the morning, so we've got that night side light with some shadows, but it's daylight for the most part. So this particular image out of the three is going to be the most neutral looking fluorescent shade. But I like the shade photo better than the daylight photo. Some people might like the daylight photo better. To me, again, this adds like an early morning warmth that I like. So part of this project is picking the image that you like. And then noon, you've got that above light. It's pretty harsh. Daylight, cloudy, a little bit warmer, fluorescent, kind of strange and purpley. But if you're doing a project where you want everything to look like it's from another planet, just setting your white balance could have an effect on that. And then finally, right after the sunset, so we've got it set to daylight. Now, of course, because the lights on City Hall are not set to daylight, they're tungsten lights, it's going to come out really yellow, right? Because the Kelvin temperature is not correct for daylight. Super red for shade. And then finally neutral, or pretty close to neutral, because the lights are now aligned with the filter that your camera is, that you've programmed your camera to set to the white balance of tungsten. So hopefully you're going to be playing around and learning about these different options. And then here's some examples of using your white balance in a creative way. So thinking about time of day and white balance, but creatively. So I want you to do some sort of landscape, and these examples are landscape-esque, but this one is photographing through, I think it's a magnifying glass, if I remember correctly. It's a really great example of being creative with the concept of landscape photography, because it's a beach photo, so the landscape is present, but it's not obvious. So the background is very out of focus. The focus is on the object that we're looking through, which is flipped the landscape to be reversed, so it's upside down. And the student photographed this, so it's a sunset, so it's automatically really already a warm light, and they put their white balance to shade. Here is a longer exposure downtown, I think it's San Francisco, the Clay Theater. I think that's Polk Street, I'm not sure. And again, they're messing around with their custom white balance, which you, in the learning unit, you can find information to learn how to play around with your custom white balance to create some really unique colors that are completely not natural or normal, because it's calibrating your camera in an artificial way, so you get artificial colors. Here's a shot, a longer exposure out at Ocean Beach. And again, due to the time of day and then the white balance setting, you're getting this very kind of monochromatic blue tone. This is an interesting one. So if you do decide to learn how to set your custom white balance, you can basically photograph almost anything really close up, out of focus, just to grab a color of your jeans or a t-shirt, and then go through the steps of setting your custom white balance. So you're tricking your camera. Some cameras you can't trick. A lot of cameras you can. And then you get these crazy weird colors. So this is an example of that. And then another example, again, of just, I think the student here did some custom setting with their Kelvin temperature. So the time of day, it's a beautiful landscape, but again, the white balance is being modified to have this kind of unrealistic, super saturated color. But because you're doing it through your white balance setting, it is going to be different than if you just messed around with your saturation. So thank you for listening, and I hope that these examples of the homework projects that you're thinking about and working on are inspiring for you. Keep me posted with questions. Thank you.